Okay, so I want to talk about love. It's been on my heart, like really strong, and but I think Frank, what you said really was a good introduction for what I'm going to say, because it's you said you had to take away a lot of other stuff just to get to that part that you needed to get to, and I feel like now that I think about it, I've seen God do that to me to get to love. Okay, so the whole point was to get me to love more, but I saw him do all these things to me first, so it was cool. So before I talk about love, I have to talk about the opposite of love. So what do you guys think is the opposite of love? Hate? I don't think so. I think actually I've always felt that fear is the opposite of love. Okay, so without love, we're really filled with fear, and you know that verse that's been one of my favorites forever, perfect love casts out all fear. So, okay, so love. Okay, you can go to the next one. So I'm going to read this verse. This is 1 John 4:16-18. Hopefully you guys can see it. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. So there's some really cool pieces here. And in verse 17, there's like this extra bit that almost takes away from the point of the verse in my mind. This is how love is made complete among us. Okay, then skip a little bit. In this world we are like Jesus. So he's literally saying right here, if we're like Jesus here in this world, love will be made complete among us. Okay, do you see that? It's really cool. And then fear has nothing to do with love, because fear has to do with punishment. If we're afraid, if we're living in fear, we're not going to love. Okay? So I just think that's so cool. Okay, so being like Jesus is how we're made complete in love. That's how we love, is like being like Jesus. Okay, but if you read the Bible and you read Jesus' stories, we kind of live like being like Jesus is crazy and hard, and it's not practical. Okay? I'm a very practical person. Okay, we can't just all be walking around Jesus hippies loving everybody. Like it's not practical. Okay, we can't do that, can we? Okay, so we can't love because we fear. Okay, and this is something that God did in my heart a few months ago. As Christians, we actually fear a lot of things, but one of the biggest things that we fear is sin, okay? And I know this because I've been guilty of it. When I first became a Christian, I was really afraid of sin, and my heart, I think, was good because I was afraid of sin because sin separates me from God, and I don't want to be separated from God because I love God. So we kind of can get away with like feeling this way, because not just because it looks good, but because, I don't know, something in my heart, I was scared of sin because I really loved God and I didn't want him to be disappointed in me, okay? So we kind of get away with like, we're being really holy because we won't go near that sin, or we won't go near that sinner, okay? But I was thinking about it and I'm like, how did that work out for me? It didn't work out that great. I didn't touch anybody's life, or I did, but not in a good way. I didn't help anybody. I didn't love anybody. I was afraid, okay? So it's not just me. I see it in the church in general. I think as Christians, we don't really know what to do with sin, and we're afraid of it, okay? So I think God showed me this crazy thing, and I don't even understand the fullness of it, but he told me one day, I don't see sin the way you see sin. I'm like, okay, God, but you can't go too far with that, because then everybody will just be sinning all the time. Okay, so let's just be careful, God, okay? Because, So we kind of see sin as like, it's the end. Like once you sin, okay, well, you proved that you weren't really real, okay? The sin is the end. It's over, okay? But everything that Jesus did proves that that's not true. But we live like it's true, okay? Just like you see somebody mess up and you're like, well, I really thought they loved God, but, I mean, obviously they didn't, because look at that horrible sin. I mean, they can't love God like that, okay? But the whole story of Jesus is just proof that that's not true, okay? Okay, so I'm going to give you some biblical proof so that you aren't scared to believe this, okay? So let's look at King David. Go to the next one. Okay, so Acts 13:22 says this. I think this is really cool. God testified concerning him. He's talking about David. I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. God testified. Okay, so God's not just like talking to David to encourage him or lift him up or build him up. He's literally saying, I'm testifying about this man. This is God. A man after my own heart, which is all I pray for my sons. He will do everything I want him to do. And when you read that, you're kind of like, God was really wrong there. Wow. Do you know the story of David? Okay, let me tell you. David had everything, okay, but that wasn't enough. He saw this beautiful woman and lusted after her and had to have her and slept with her. We call that having an affair, okay? In the Bible, they don't say that, but that's what it is, okay? She got pregnant. Her husband was away, so everybody would know something was wrong here. So to cover it up, he just murders her husband. Okay, we just call that murder still. Okay, so this is pretty serious. These are like really serious sins. Like if you saw this in the church, if you saw a pastor have an affair and then murder the woman's husband, you would be like, that's it. I mean, come on. He obviously fooled us. And maybe in some cases that's true, but you would think, wow, I thought he was different. I thought he loved God, but, you know. I mean, look at the Psalms. David wrote a lot of those. He was passionate and loved God, but look what he did, okay? And look what God says about him. He's a man after my own heart. Was God wrong? No, I don't think so. I think we just need to look at it differently. Okay, so the whole point is that God, he might not be looking at it the way that we're looking at it, okay? David's story should end there, right? It should be like he sinned, he fell, God strikes him dead. That should be the story, because that's how we live with sin. But it doesn't end there, okay? Am I saying that sin is okay? No. I'm not saying there's no sin. I'm not saying it's okay. David paid a huge price for his sin, okay? Sin causes problems, which is why it's sin, which is why God doesn't want us to do it, because it causes some serious problems for us, okay? What I'm saying is that sin, it shouldn't be the focus. It shouldn't be the thing that we're afraid of, okay? What we should focus on is love. Loving each other, loving God, loving the people of the world, loving the people around us. Because if we don't love, and we're not focused on love, but we follow every rule, and we're completely obedient, then what are we like? We're like the Pharisees, which were the only people in the Bible that Jesus was actually like really mean to or honest with, okay? I don't want to be like that, okay? I don't want to just follow the law to the letter and have no passion for God, which is what the Pharisees were like, so much so that they couldn't even recognize their God when he came to them in the flesh. They didn't even recognize him, okay? Because we live in fear of sin and not living in love, we are causing a lot of problems to ourselves and the church and our whole country, I think. And I just kind of think, did Jesus focus on sin when he came? No. The only people he really talked to like that were the Pharisees, who were really physically not sinning. They were following all the laws. So I think part of the point here that can help us get over this fear is that when we start actually loving people, I think we'll see less sin. Okay, because go to the next slide. Jesus actually says this to his disciples. If you love me, you will obey my commandments. Okay, I think it's really important here that we look at it and say, he doesn't say, when you obey my commandments, you prove you love me. Okay? It doesn't say that. It says, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. So what should come first before obedience? Love, right? Doesn't that make sense? I hear Jesus saying it to me like this, okay? He's saying this to me. By obeying, if you love me, you'll obey my commands, because loving me will cause you to obey me. You'll live in my love, and you'll see that what I command for you is good and not to harm you. You'll see that when you disobey, you get hurt or you hurt others, or both. When you love me, you'll trust me and you'll obey me. It just comes. The obedience comes, okay? Because we love him, we trust him, we see that's what's best for us. Okay, so do you see the difference here? You can go to the next one. Living in love will cause more obedience or less sin, which is what we want, than living in the fear of sin. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go back to love a little bit here. Okay, you can go to the next one. John 13:35. Jesus says this too. Everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. That one kills me. Okay. Do you see that? I mean, we have that. We love each other, but mostly we don't, I think, to be really honest, okay? I'm not just talking about our church here. I'm talking about in general, I think, church. In general, we just don't love each other. Like, Christian marriages don't have any better success rate than regular marriages. Or, it's like we can't even love our own spouse. How can we look at that and say, oh, yeah, they'll know I'm his disciple. It's okay that it didn't work out with my husband or whatever. Because they'll still see. No, they won't. We're not loving each other. I think the voice in our country of the church is not the voice of love right now, okay? I've been listening for it on the radio and in videos and different things, and I'm not hearing love. I'm hearing judgment, criticism. Now, I'm not saying that nobody loves, okay, because I know there's a lot of really good, loving people who do really loving things, but those voices tend to be quieter, okay? We hear them, but maybe they're really quiet, or the majority is not love, so we're not really hearing that, okay? I don't know if you feel like you can argue that, but just think about it for a second. You've probably been hurt by other Christians, okay? And you've probably hurt other Christians too, okay? Now, because I'm very practical, I kind of think sometimes we're just too sensitive. So sometimes we get hurt and maybe we shouldn't have. But I think mostly we're just not loving each other. So sometimes we hurt each other. Okay, so the next slide. This is something just really cool, I think. Okay. Because we're supposed to be the light of the world, and because we can only be the light if the world knows we're the light, which is the whole point of light, is that you can see it. Okay? They're only going to know, and they will only know it by our love for each other. Okay, so they're only going to see the light by our love for each other. We actually have to stand up and do something. We have to actually start living and walking in love. And the whole point is because others will see it and want it. Okay, it's totally irresistible and unstoppable. Okay, so let's do it. Okay, that's how I feel. Okay, when they see that love, they're going to want it. Okay, and I want it. I want that love for God, and I want it for you guys, and I want it for the world. And I think it's time that the world hears that from us, Okay? So our challenge here, there's a few obstacles, but the biggest one for me was we're going to stop living in fear, okay? We're going to not walk in fear. We're going to start walking in love. And again, this doesn't mean we're accepting sin and we're saying it's okay. We're just saying that we're not going to focus on what's right and wrong in your life, and we're going to focus on love, how to get you to love, okay? And this is something that God showed me. This is why this is really important, okay? Because God can wipe away your sin in 1 second, okay? Jesus died on the cross. We believe that. That's the truth. We can't argue that. He can take your sin away in a second. How long does it take for him to get you to fall in love with him? Okay? It's been like, I don't know, it's 2014 right now, so it's been like 2,000 years since Christ came. I don't know how many thousands of years were before that with humans. I don't know. It's probably debatable. I don't know. But we still haven't gotten it. The whole point was for us to love him. We still haven't done it yet. But he came and took our sin away in a second. We believe that. So isn't love like, love is more difficult than getting rid of sin. Does that make sense? Okay, so you're hearing me, okay, but there's still something maybe that's, I don't know, maybe not quite, you're not quite believing me. So just humor me for a second. I have 2 stories I want to tell you. Okay, so one is a hypothetical story that has not happened to us, but maybe has happened, okay, and then another one's a real thing that happened to me. Okay, so think about this, okay, a new couple comes into the church, they're like young and cool, and oh, it's so great. It would be great for them to stay here. I hope they like it. They look really good filling those 2 seats right there. Okay, so we want them to stay. Okay. Okay, so you're like, all right, I'm going to go talk to them. I'm going to like see how they're doing stuff. Okay, you go over and talk to them, and they're like, yeah, this is really cool, blah, blah. You get to know them. And you know what you find out? They live together, and they're not married. Oh, gosh. They're living in sin. So the obvious thing that you do is you focus on the sin, right? And you tell them they're living in sin. This isn't what God wants for them, because after all, it's true. And so you focus on it, and you say, this is not a good example for others. We don't want anybody else getting any bad ideas. And you get them married, okay? You do it. You get them married. Okay, let's move on to somebody else. They're good now. They're not living in sin anymore. Okay. I thought to myself, we do that, and we justify it, and it seems okay. Because in the end, we got them out of sin, right? Okay? But when I think about what Jesus would do in that situation, what would Jesus have done? And I kind of feel like this is what he would do. I feel like he would be like, oh, okay, cool. All right, well, why don't you come follow me, and I'll love you, like with this love that no one can describe, that makes you cry every time you feel it. And then they wouldn't be able to not love him back, right? This may take a little while, I don't know. But he would just love them, and they would love him back. And then, when they trusted him enough to express pain or anything in their life or their worries, he'd say, guys, this isn't what's best for you. I have something better. Okay, it's hurting you. Let me show you, right? But we don't like that because it takes too long. Okay? Okay, here's a really extremely touchy one. Let me get a sip of water. So stay with me for this. I just have to say this. What's really funny is I grew up the youngest of 4 kids with a family who all likes to talk a lot. So I was telling John, I'm like, this is the cool thing, is I get to make my point, and I don't have to make it as quickly and precisely as possible, because you guys can't interrupt me, okay? I'm thinking, this is how I grew up. Like, if I wanted to make a point, I better say it quick, because Tommy will argue it, Ryan will make a joke, and my dad will start telling a story about something. So I can make my point like nice and slow. It's really pleasant. Okay. All right. So here's my touchy story. Okay. So I was listening to the radio, and I wanted to listen to talk radio. I was driving, and I couldn't find a talk show I wanted to listen to, so I started going through FM radio, and I found a teaching, and I was like, oh, cool. Sounded like a cool young guy. He was funny. He was talking about marriage, and he was saying something like, women, the husband just wants to feel like he's the king of his castle, even if he's not. All you gotta do is make him feel like the king of his castle. So I'm like, oh, this is pretty funny. I like this because it's funny, but it's also kind of true. So I'm like, okay, I like this. This is good. So he starts saying that marriage is an institution, okay? And he said, marriage is an institution between one man and one woman. Can I get an amen? And I was just like, something hit me that I didn't like it. Was he incorrect? No, I don't think so. But why did he say it? I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99% sure that his church that he was speaking to that day was probably 100% male-female marriages. Okay, I'm just going to put that out there. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Right? Okay. I don't think you'd be there if you weren't. Okay? So this is going out on radio. This is the voice that the church is displaying to the world. Okay? Anybody could have heard that at that moment. Okay? So why did he say it? I kind of I'm looking at it thinking, why did he say that? Those people didn't need to hear that, right? I don't think they did. It reminds me of 1 Corinthians, again, go to the next one. Oh, no, that's not it. Yes, okay. If I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but do not have love, I've become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Okay, so what I thought of when this guy said this was, it's the truth without love. That's what it felt like to me, okay? Now, I think what this verse is saying is, I see it like this, you get three choices. You get to choose either a beautiful song that will make you cry if you hear it, silence, or a really annoying somebody just like banging on the cymbal over and over and making a ton of noise. Okay, you have three choices here. Obviously, if you can't have number one, the beautiful song, you would pick silence. You wouldn't pick the terrible song. So wouldn't it have just been better in my mind for him to just not say it than to listen to the cymbals? Right? Okay. So saying the truth without love is actually hurting people, and it's hurting our cause. It's making our voice not love. It's making our voice judgment. Okay? Here's what I want to say about it. What if we loved so deeply and so generously, like Jesus did when he came, and extended grace and mercy where we don't think it should be extended? Maybe our nation wouldn't be a nation of hurting, broken, searching people just looking somewhere for love and acceptance, because they would know where to find it if we loved. They would know if they wanted to be loved and accepted, they could come here. Maybe we wouldn't have so many things we don't want. Like, maybe we wouldn't have to be fighting about gay marriage, or we wouldn't have so many divorces, or because we would love people and they would love God, and we don't have to tell them, stop doing this, do this, do this, because they'd be here and they'd be reading their Bibles and they'd be in love with God and they'd want to do what he says. They'd be wanting to obey his word, okay? So think about that. Could we change the way that we live so that we point people to God without rubbing their faces on everything that they do wrong? Does that make sense? Doesn't that sound better? You know? Okay. So, what does it mean to love like Jesus loved? Okay, so here's this idea that God gave me. I started a campaign. It's called 15 Weeks to Love. And I'm semi-ready to start it, and it starts today. Okay? Okay? So, in that video, we saw that Jesus, he walked out each attribute of love. But 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, you can go to the next one. It literally gives us a list, okay, of 15 things that love is or love is not. Okay? So I'm just going to read them real quick. 1, love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. Love is not rude. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. You're good, Adam. Love does not keep a record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil. Love rejoices with the truth. Love never gives up. Love always trusts. Love always hopes. And love always endures. Okay? So those are 15 things that we can literally try to do. Okay? Now, think about that for a second. Okay? What I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to start with, can you go back on it? We're going to start with week 1 is going to be love is patient. Okay? Week 2 is going to be love is patient and kind. Week 3 is going to be love is patient, love is kind, and it's not envious. Okay? And we're going to keep going until at the end of the 15 weeks, we're going to be walking in all 15 of these things. It sounds really, really hard, right? Is this even possible? That's kind of what I'm saying to myself. Can I actually do it? The thing is Jesus came down and he did that, okay? He did that, and he did it so that we would also do it. It wasn't just like this fun thing for him to come down and try to be like that. He actually died for that, right? So we actually have to do it. Like, I know it sounds impossible, okay? But this is what he wants for us. He actually wants us to walk in these things, okay? So this is what I say to Jesus. I'm like this. Okay, that's great for you, God, okay? But it doesn't actually work here. There's a limit, okay? You have to draw the line somewhere. You do, right? That's what we think. It's not practical, okay? But I'm pretty sure that Jesus came down to tell us to do these things because he actually wants us to do it. That's what I think. Isn't that weird? I think he actually does, okay? So can you go to the next one? This is one of my favorite stories in the Bible. I love this. Okay, this is Peter. Peter's a good Christian guy here. Peter came to Jesus and said, Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? up to 7 times. And I think he's kind of bragging here a little bit. I've forgiven my brother 7 times, Lord. Look it, okay? And Jesus is like, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Or don't keep track. Stop counting. That's the point, right? This is how it goes in my head. This is what I say to Jesus. I'm like, okay, Jesus, listen. Okay. Yeah. Forgiveness, it's great. Forgiveness is great. We get that, okay? But you don't really think that we can do it, right? I mean, how many times am I really supposed to forgive? Okay? Because I can't just keep letting people hurt me over and over. I mean, my brother, he did this thing 7 times, and I've forgiven him, Jesus. I really have. But, I mean, when he does it one more time, he's dead to me. I mean, that's the line, right? He did it 7 times, I'm good, right? I mean, I can't keep letting him going. And I see Jesus, literally, when I'm saying stuff like this to him, he puts his head down, he's just like, oh my gosh. He's like, JJ, you're not getting the point. How does she not get this? He's like, no, not 7 times, 70 times 7. Okay? The story, literally, right in the Bible, right after this, he goes into a story. He tells everybody a parable. Okay? He says the story about a servant who owed a ton of money. I think we talked about this recently. He owed a ton of money to this rich guy, but he pleaded for his life, he pleaded for mercy, and the guy lets him go of his debt. So then he goes home, and he has a friend who owes him $10, and he's like, you better give it to me, I'm going to throw you in jail if you don't. And the guy's like, please, I don't have it, I don't know what to do, I don't care, go to jail. No mercy, even though he just got a ton of mercy. He follows this thing with Peter up with this story, because obviously it goes together. He's saying, JJ, you're the one that had a huge $100,000 debt, and I took it away in a second. I just let it go. I took it away because you asked me to. But your brother causing you pain 7 times, even though it's really painful and it feels really bad to me, it's like a $10 debt. Okay? And you think it's too great to forgive? Change your perspective. That's it. Don't look at it that way. Change your perspective. Keep forgiving. So is it possible? I think it is. I just think we have to change how we look at it. We have to change how we think. Okay, so this week is week 1. This is Love is Patient. I think I have, week 1, Love is Patient, okay? So what I'm going to be doing, and I'm asking all of you to join me, okay, is I'm going to be studying patience. I'm going to be looking in the Bible to see where Jesus was patient, okay? And I'm going to actually try to be more patient. I'm going to actually try to do that, okay? I was thinking about it because I've been thinking about this for weeks, and this is going to be probably my hardest week. I am so impatient. Oh my gosh. Do you know what the hardest thing about patience is? I'm realizing. Kids, yeah, geez, really. Waiting. I think waiting is the hardest thing because I hate waiting. I know. I can sit here. Okay, like I'm waiting for the doctor. I can sit here and be like, okay, when the doctor comes in, I'm just gonna say that's okay, no problem. I can fake that feeling. But you know what's so hard is waiting. I don't want to wait for you. Oh, it drives me crazy because this is going to be a hard week for me. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be blogging about it, journaling about it, studying it, okay? And I have a website. It's 15weekstolove.com, and you can go and you can read it. And what I really want is we're kind of like doing it as a group, even though it's a very individual thing. So, write your own struggles and write what you're learning in your own stories and what you're learning about patience and then every other attribute of love. But let's really try to come together, like post something on the Family Hope Facebook page or write something on the blog or something that, I really want to see if we can do this together because I can change maybe my voice to love, but we're really going to be effective when we all change the voice, okay, when our whole voice together is love. Right? That's how we're going to change things. So, why are you laughing so much? Okay. I think I have a slide that says something like Christ in me. Yeah. Okay. So I can't actually do this. I can't actually just be more patient and kind and whatever. I actually have to do this. Colossians 1:27. Christ in me, the hope of glory. Okay. So what I'm going to try to do is actually let God work himself in me, okay? If Christ is in me, then I should be able to be more patient. I should be able to be more kind because Christ lives in me, okay? So just think about that. Like you're not just trying to be a better person. You're not just trying to be more patient or more kind, but you're actually trying to let Christ be the hope of glory in your life. Does that make sense? So, yeah, so that's what I want to do. So, just think about, how you can allow God to work in you. Like, I can't work patience in myself. I have to allow God to work that patience in me and be patient through me, okay?